Study guide section on lighting for television broadcast. We're going to talk about a three-point lighting setup here. That's your first answer. How many light sources are used to place shadows professionally? I love the way I say that. With lighting, you're placing shadows. So, the first light that is key to everything is the key light. You might say that I'm being lit right now by the projector, which could be my key light. So what you honestly do is you take a look at where you want the light to hit the person. That's going to be the first light, and it's usually on their best side. You get that one set up first, and you say, okay, that looks pretty good. Then you fill in the shadows. So if I'm being lit on this side, I've got to be lit with all the shadows that you'd have on this side of my face. I might have a little bit of bounce off of here, but otherwise this side of my face would be pretty dark. And that's when you use a fill light. Because what are you doing? You're filling in the shadows. Key light, best side of the face, fill light, fill in the shadows, and the last one is just to give it a 3D look, a little bit of a three-dimensional look. You put a little skiff of light on the back of the head. They call that a backlight, or many other things, which we'll get to in a second here. So that's the idea. Can you have the key light over here and the fill light over here? Sure. Can you have the backlight in front? No. All right. This type of light makes a good key light and backlight in most situations. We're saying the category of light. This is a light that everyone says, a spotlight. Put a spotlight on them. You hear that all the time. But in fact, a spotlight is a very direct, bright, intense light. Do we have a spotlight in this room? As a matter of fact, we do. What light would make a good fill light? Okay, that answer is floodlight. We have a lot of lighting instruments that actually would make a good fill light. We have a softbox. You can have an umbrella light, the fluorescent lights, and the LED lights that you can kind of turn up the power on how much ever you want, you know. And I'm going to show you the difference between a spotlight and a fill light here, and why a floodlight is better for filling in shadows. So if a spotlight is a more direct, intense beam, and a floodlight is more dispersed, which one is which up here? The idea, and this is maybe not the best photograph, but the idea is if these are both sitting at, say, 10 feet away from the wall, that's a more direct beam, and that's a more dispersed beam. Okay? It's like if you had a flashlight can be more direct, but a floodlight floods the whole room. So the spotlight is for the key light, the floodlight is for the fill light. Now the backlight, where do you place the backlight? Well, obviously behind and usually above the subject. So there's some other names for it. I'm not sure what it's going to be on the state test, but I often hear it called a rim light, a hair light, a halo light. I think I especially hear hair light in like still photography or model photography, like in photographic studios. Rim light I hear all the time in videography and cinematography. So you place it behind and above the subject, and Walker's preference is that you make it a slightly cool tone, like a little bit of a blue tone, or white. But a lot of times you'll put a little bit of warm on the front of the face. You'll warm up the face a little bit. So you might have a little bit of a yellow or orange light coming on the front. And that's what I like. And then I like a little bit of blue on the back. And then again, if the hair just lights up a little bit, it gives you a 3D effect. So three-point lighting is used all over the place professionally. It's very common. What is base light? Base light is the foundation light. Base light is the light that already exists before you put any specials on. So in this room, we might just say the fluorescent lights that are already here lighting the room the way it is the base light. And then you'll put a special, like I think this light right here would be a special because the projector light is so bright, it's like a special light on me. So before you do particular lighting setups to light your subject, whatever that foundation or that base light is what already exists. And if it's outside, what would it be? Right, it'd be like the sunlight that already exists, or you might call it daylight, or the moonlight. Is a floodlight an example of A, a soft diffuse lighting, or B, hard direct lighting? Just seeing if you're paying attention, you should know the answer to that one. What is fall off, and why is it fast or slow? Fall off. Is it radioactive? No, that's fallout. Fall off is how fast light falls off from being very bright. And let's say that my face is very bright right now. But if I were to stand back another 30 feet from that projector, my face wouldn't be as bright because the light will have fallen off a little bit. Unless you got one of those laser pointers that hits the moon, light falls off. So here's an example of fall off here. At 2.8 feet distance from the lighting instrument, we're fully lit. At 4 feet, it's just a little bit dimmer. At 5.6 feet, it's fallen off quite a bit. 8 feet, it's almost gone. I can't even read that. 11 feet, it's so dark I can't even read it. So would that be fast fall off or slow fall off? The confusion is you think, well, it falls off slowly. But what you're really after is how fast does it fall off from bright to dark. So that's actually fast fall off. That is not a bright spotlight that you can hit someone from 100 feet away. That's why in the auditorium, you've probably got lights that are close to 100 feet away that hit the stage. They're certainly at least 20 feet and 30 and 40 feet, okay? And so those lights don't fall off fast at all. So if a light falls off fast, would it more likely be a spotlight or a floodlight? Again, it would be a floodlight. It would be a soft diffuse light. Again, we have soft boxes, umbrella lights, and LEDs and other things in this room. Another way they talk about fall off, though, is not only just fast and slow as far as the distance, but you can also talk about it as far as how the actual subject looks. So this is really fast fall off here, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing because it's kind of like what I was talking about, whether it feels like it falls off slowly. Well, on the subject itself, it goes from bright to dark in probably a half an inch. Very harsh lighting. Bam. So you would say that's fast fall off on the subject, where this is a more slow, gradual fall off. By the way, which apple looks better to you? Which one would you rather eat? I think when it's lit like that, it's got a little bit of fill light in there, filling in the shadow. That's a slower fall off. This doesn't look as good projected on the screen, but on my computer you can see it's obviously like the apple again. Lit on one side, not lit at all on this side. So it's really fast fall off. And this one's filled in with the fill light a little bit, so it's slower. Okay, when we talk about lighting, it's not just lighting the set, but how the camera captures the light. And so we're going to talk about the camera, that there's a part of the camera, a round hole that opens or closes to control how much light comes in from the lens. So even though this is typically what we use for still camera photography, we're going to talk about it in terms of videography. It does shoot video. So when you let the light in through the lens, it hits what they call either in still photography the aperture, or here what we're calling the iris, I-R-I-S. It's that little hole there, the round hole that opens up and can let in a lot of light, or it can stop down and let in only a little bit of light. And so you do adjust lighting for that as well. If I'm out in the bright sun, I may actually close my iris down a little bit because I'm letting in too much light. It also adjusts what you're focusing by controlling the iris. Okay, for a green screen to work, some of you guys have lit the green screen. Let's see if you already know the answer to this. For a green screen to work, the light must be as even as possible. So you don't light a green screen where it's really harsh right here and it's kind of darker up here, and like I've got here, you got a shadow on the green screen. The green screen just has to be lit so it's completely even. It all looks like one color. It doesn't kind of fade into different shades of green. And if it's lit perfectly, then you can do what they call keying it out. And so you tell the computer, sample this color. You can do it with white, by the way. White actually works pretty well. I've used a sheet. You steal a sheet from your mom when she's not looking, and you go out and you film something with your friends, and they're holding up the sheet, and you're standing in front of it. And if you say, okay, camera, this color here, sample this color, white, then the computer, or whatever system you're using, but it's usually some kind of a digital computer system, we'll say, okay, I'm going to take that out. Everything that is that color is going to be taken out. And then you can replace that color with whatever you want. Another color or scenery or birds flying in the background. I mean, whatever you want. But if it's not all that color, then you end up with little splotches and things. Okay, just like cows, if you don't want the light to get out, what do you have to close? That's a lame joke. What do you think these things are called right here? Barn doors. I don't know where they came up with that term. I mean, you can guess where they came up with that term, but I don't know why it stuck, but it's very simple. So if you open up the barn doors, you're letting all the light out. You can actually close them down a little bit and let a little less light out. Do we have an example of barn doors in this room? Yep. Again, it's on that spotlight. And then last, without looking back at the diagram I first showed you, I want to see who was paying attention. I want you to draw a diagram of a traditional three-point lighting setup on this dude. So you're going to light him with a key light. Where does the key light come from? A fill light and a backlight. So just draw those lights and how they would shine on this guy and see if you've got that figured out. That's the end of the lighting section.